Bingo Blitz rules.
If your bingo has ads in it,
That's not a bingo.
if it doesn't have the coolest tournaments, mini games, and the most breathtaking design,
Nope, not a bingo.
if your bingo moment makes you feel so excited that you just want to burst in joy and scream out loud, bingo! Sorry, so you're playing...
Bingo Blitz? Now that's a bingo. Go for a world of excitement with Bingo Blitz, the #1 free bingo game. Download Bingo Blitz and play for free.
Now that's a bingo.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
Hi there, this is Fred Greenhalgh welcoming you back to Undertow. By now, you've hopefully been enjoying your time in the sleepy seaside town of Durham, where some mysteries are better kept unresolved. What was it in the night sky? Will we ever know? Does it matter? Well, what we do know is Hovering, this gripping, immersive audio fiction show, was created by the folks I have with me today, Alex Duncan and Clea Frost, and we'll be talking more with both of them about how this show came together. Alex Duncan is the creator, also plays the role of Kyle, grew up in Tasmania, Hobart, in a tiny town south of Hobart called Lucaston, moved to Melbourne, Australia to study acting and screenwriting. He has never seen a UFO, at least he won't admit that he has. Alex, welcome to Undertow.
Hi.
Also joined with Clea Frost, the producer. Clea is an award-winning writer-producer, story developer who has worked in Australia, Asia, and the U.S. across film, TV, web series, games, VR, and, of course, audio drama. Hovering was produced under her Plot Twist label, www.plottwist.au. Hails from Melbourne, Australia. Clea, welcome to Undertow.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Before we get started, note this is not a spoiler-free interview, so if you haven't listened to Hovering, go back in your feed and listen to the show. Starts here, season 10 of Undertow. It's okay. We'll wait. No, seriously, just... Great. Okay, ready? Here we go. All stories must start at the beginning. Alex, tell us, how did the concept for Hovering come about?
When I was at screenwriting school, I came up with a concept for a film which you could follow different characters seeing a UFO for the first time. And then I developed that concept as a TV series with a workshop that Clea ran through Film Victoria.
Yeah.
The workshop was called Plot Twist. And in that workshop, there was a girl called Marissa Brown who really loved the idea for Hovering, and she had been listening to the Polybius Conspiracy, which is a crazy audio drama, but it's found footage, like incredible found footage that really sounds like it's real. And she suggested turning Hovering into an audio drama. And then I did and got really excited about it. It took years to write the script. And then I came back and pitched it at a screen festival event, and Clea was there. And I said, oh, hey, this is the this is the podcast that we developed together. And she went, oh, yeah, great. I'll come on board.
Amazing. Yeah, I'd love to hear your side of that story, Clea.
Yeah, well, it was super cool to have seen. So I have a background in development and writing for film and TV. So I was running these workshops for up-and-coming writers in our state of Victoria. And talking also about new media. Like I've always been sort of fascinated about what's going to be the next thing in storytelling. So I've also done a bit of work in VR and stuff. So when I love podcasts, like I just love them, fiction, nonfiction, like so much of my days actually spent listening to podcasts. It's completely obsessive. If there were no podcasts, I think my brain might explode. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, when I bumped into Alex at that event, and he had taken this concept, which I really loved, and he'd sort of reimagined it for audio drama, I was just like, ooh, this is exactly the sort of storytelling experiment that I want to experience now. Like I'm working a little bit, as I said, in VR and games and these different mediums, and then audio drama to me was just such a no-brainer. So Alex and I met at this event, like at the end of 2019. You can see where this is going. Like, yes, in the new year, let's get this started. Like, this is going to be brilliant. And then, of course, pandemic. So what could have been a fairly short process became a multi-year journey. But, we learned a lot along the way, I guess.
There was something really useful about that, because we didn't get funding from anywhere, which was, initially difficult and annoying. But what that meant was, like, I went to acting school, so I know a bunch of really great actors, and I knew that, I was going to put myself in the lead role. And so everyone else could kind of come in whenever we could get them. And we kept on scheduling these sessions, and then they would have to get cancelled because we were in lockdown again, or, someone was sick or something like that. Someone got COVID. But because it was hard for us, but Claire and I realized that we're not beholden to anyone, because we were doing it all off our own back. So we just went, look, this might take a really long time, but we really like this story, and we'll just keep on going.
Yeah, and I really came at it from that independent filmmaking point of view. So, like, at first, when Alex and I began talking about it, we went to different audio studios and got quotes, and we talked to super professional, companies who specialize in audio. And the budget we would have needed to execute Hovering, from their point of view, which was totally valid because they have, overheads and people to pay and everything, but it just wasn't within our means. So then I was sort of like, well, I recorded a lot of audio for films when I was in film school, and I felt like I could probably do a pretty good job of the dialogue if we could then afterwards find someone to do really amazing sound design, which we did with Melissa May, who comes out of a public broadcaster. She had a lot of experience in audio at the ABC. So I was like, well, that's a cost-saving thing that I can do. So we just bought some equipment. I bought, a boom mic and pole and one of those Zoom recorders. And then we were like, okay, let's just see, because, this is the only way we're going to get it made.
I mean, I love to hear that. I mean, I'm, in the post-COVID era, recording more and more in the studio, but that was sort of my early days, was out on location. And there's something about it that's just so authentic and fresh and original that is very hard to replicate in the studio. And also I find, and this is, I guess, there's a bunch of other questions I want to ask you too, but, there's it's interesting that you note that the sound people, like, we want to sound it a certain way. We want it to sound like all pristine and beautiful, but there's something about podcasts that does lend itself to sort of a very scrappy, almost kind of like punk rock kind of vibe that feels more like authentic and real. And especially, I think this was one of your Instagram reels, Alex. You had said something about going for that sort of found footage quality. So I think when I first heard the show, what really struck me was how, like, if you tried to intentionally in a professional studio environment make it sound like the way it does, it probably would have taken you like just hundreds and hundreds of hours of degrading the sound. Whereas if you just actually do it, it's an easier path to get there. So I don't know. I'm curious on kind of, it sounds like part of the reason you got there was just sort of like practical ramifications, but were there other things that you learned of, like, okay, this is our approach. How can we sort of lean into this and use it and make it feel like it was very much a strategic, choice?
Yeah, look, I mean, it was a convenient choice, but it was also a creative choice. When I started, I was listening to the Polybius Conspiracy and also Homecoming, and that was really huge for me because of the way that they'd recorded the actors in an environment. You could hear the fish tank in those scenes, and I mean, obviously, it's a big budget show, but I knew that I had actors, and they were all fantastic theatre actors. And I knew that we could put something together where the movement within a space was really, important. Yeah, so like the very first recording session we did was the sessions between Rupert and Kyle. So I play Kyle, and then Simon Caulfield plays Rupert, and we recorded those on my bed. And I think that was, I mean, if that had been really difficult, or the sound had not really been that different to if we were in a studio, we might have gone down a different path. But what happened is from my opinion, actually, I think that the acting was completely different because we were lying down, like we were facing each other. And I could turn, and every time I turned, there were all these like rustles from the bed sheets. And, you know, years later, we found out from Melissa that that's really annoying for her. But, what I was the director, and what I was looking for was an authenticity from the performance, and that got us that authenticity. And, you know, after that, we did some of the nighttime car scenes where Kyle first pulls over Leo. And we recorded that in my driveway at night. And again, there's something about the sound quality when you're in an environment which replicates what you've written. I mean, it took us years, and then we got to like, oh, we're recording this on the beach. It's going to be amazing. I mean, Cleo went to so many like outdoor beach environments and just went,
the wind.
We can't.
Terrible, impossible.
Yeah. And actually, like obviously there were challenges for Melissa given the way that we'd recorded the audio, and there's lessons we learned from that. But actually, the work she had to do the hardest to make it sound naturalistic was, in the end, we recorded the beach in Alex's apartment, which is a very lofty space, so it was just super echoey, and she had to spend ages like working on those voices, you know, to get them to sound like they're outdoors but without this echo and stuff. And so sometimes you have to spend, I mean, obviously if you did something in the studio and it was pristine, maybe it would have been less work for her, but sometimes you have to spend just as much time to recreate the thing that you can capture in real life. So it's just like that balance. And because we'd been listening to tons of audio drama in the lead up to production, it was also like the little moments, the little silences, the little moments where you just hear characters moving around are really great and dramatic for the audience. Like it gives you a pause to sort of absorb what's happened, but also you sort of feel so present in what's going on. And the whole time we've been thinking about hovering as cinema for your ears. Like you are there, you're immersed. So there's just little moments I love in the series, like when Kyle in episode 1, he gets all the weird calls. Then he goes to knock on his mum's door and he's not sure whether to wake her up or not. And then he goes and grabs his keys and he walks out. And that was all recorded in my current house. And you can just hear the rhythm was there. You didn't have to spend lots of time like kind of laying out the sound effects to get that rhythm, because it was just Alex doing those things and me sort of like following him around with the boom pole, like in a tight corridor. But anyway, like when I heard that, when we put it into the episode, I was like, so perfect. So, you know, I mean, I'm sure all the sound engineers out there are horrified.
No, I think it's the good stuff. And Alex, your story earlier about doing the scene at night reminded me. So, you know, we had done this approach when we adapted Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez's Lock and Key for Audible. I mean, 10 years ago now. And, you know, it takes place in this spooky house. They had a scene where the main character is being chased by ghosts, shadows, actually. At any rate, we recorded it at night with them with like flashlights and like running around in the dark. And of course, everyone's like, this is, you know, no one knew it was recorded in the dark. It's audio drama, but you're like, but they knew. Yeah. Anyway, so it's I don't know, it's fun, and I think to what you were saying, the authenticity of performance, it's really there. It's like about, you know, trying to create a human moment, and you know, no matter what your tools, that's a very hard thing to do. And if you can, you know, put actors in a space where physically it's easier to get to that place, then all for it.
One of the things that I love about podcasts and podcasts, the way it's evolving, is that I grew up with radio and loving radio, and it was such a big part of people's lives, and it felt very accessible. It was like a media form that was very accessible to everyone, because it does have all these personal touches, and now with podcasting, you can see that kind of that connection, that genealogy between the two, and it's so intimate. It's the same way that the radio was like really in your house at your kitchen table or whatever. Now this is even more intimate because it's just inside your head.
Yeah.
And I think those little extra sounds are really important to the intimacy. And, when we were recording lying down on a bed, it felt very intimate between me and Simon.
Yeah. Well, when even those scenes you're talking about on the bed, I think one of the real powers is that, like, those scenes, you're like, am I like eavesdropping on a private conversation? Like, am I kind of allowed to be here? You did that really skillfully about making it both feel real, and also, is there some sort of like subversive quality or some voyeuristic quality to me even consuming this show that's really interesting from the audience point of view. So we kind of jumped right into the craft of recording, but one question, just rewinding for a moment, Alex, is in taking something that sounds like you had, I don't know how far it got in the sort of screenplay or teleplay direction, but adapting it as a podcast, what was that like for you, and what did you learn? What was easier or harder than you expected it to be?
I've written full screenplays and things, but I haven't made them into films. I've worked in TV rooms and seen how scripts have been built. But actually, the type of writing that I've done the most of and that I've seen all the way through to completion is theatre. And what that means in a screenwriting environment is that everybody goes, oh, your dialogue's really good, but make it shorter, and let's get out of the scene really quickly, and we only care about action, and it's a visual medium. And, I love writing dialogue, and I love writing kind of waffly dialogue where people like talk and they kind of don't know what they're saying, and I love seeing that on stage. And that's the style that my plays are as well. So it was not so much a process of adapting it. I mean, I hadn't written the script as a TV series, but we developed it as a TV series in this workshop. And I think there was something very freeing for me about writing in audio drama because I felt like I could make the characters talk for as long as I wanted them to. Audio drama is, sometimes they needed to talk for a little bit longer because you need the time to get to know that character's voice. Hovering, in terms of audio drama, there are so many characters in Hovering and so many places. It's actually very complicated, which maybe I didn't realize going into it. But I think that it was very satisfying to be able to bring the skills that I have probably most of all in dialogue, and because I'm coming from an acting perspective, and not have to worry about, what's the image, and I also feel like there are specific images in Hovering that we create. I think the sound in the background really helps you give you an image, so that stuff is there as well.
Okay, Fred popping back in here to say we're taking a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Alex and Clea about the existence or non-existence of alien phenomena. Back here in a bit.
For many businesses, the holiday season can be both an exciting and stressful time. With so many balls in the air, one thing you definitely want to know you can rely on is how you're selling your products. And with Shopify, you can rest easy knowing it's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. And when it comes to successful brands like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, an often overlooked secret is all the things that go on behind the scenes that make selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, if you take a peek behind that curtain, you'll see that Shopify is what makes it all possible. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, so that's more happy customers and way more sales going It's true all the time, but especially this time of year, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use for Realm merch with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
What's up, everyone? It's Noah Daniels.
Hey, y'all. I'm JJ.
Hey, guys. It's Kat.
And we're your hosts of the Real Hauntings podcast, where we bring on guests who share their first-hand encounter ghost stories and supernatural experiences. Now on to the trailer.
I've been warned to not tell this story, but I think because of the way it ends, it's okay to tell this story, because some people say that with certain entities, to like speak of them or talk about them or in any way like portray them as powerful will attract them to other people. The creepiest thing about it to me is a lot of times it would wait for me to notice it. Like it would just lay its arm out like this, and then I'd be like, where is it? Where is it? And then I'd see it, and then it would just slither back.
For more information on the Real Hauntings, Real Ghost Stories podcast, make sure you check out Real.fm to learn more about our podcast and many other amazing podcasts.
And we're back with Alex Duncan and Clea Frost, creator and producer of Hovering. So moving to the story itself, one thing that I think is really fascinating is that, like, okay, a little spoiler, but people should have heard the show by now if you're listening to this episode. But essentially, the sighting is kind of like a big MacGuffin, right? Like, it really is a story about these people in this community, maybe as much or more so than it is about the thing that was seen that night. And to me, that's sort of just fascinating. Like, it's almost like there's like a negative space that sort of initiates the mystery. And so I don't know how did you land on that being the way to kind of cut your way into this story?
Look, when I was developing it in this TV workshop that Clea ran, we pitched it to a bunch of TV people at the end. That was part of the workshop. And all the people that I pitched it to, they were like, oh, cool, but what is the UFO? Like, what is the alien? You need to tell us. It's going to be sci-fi and it's going to be amazing. And, you know, that was early days for the script, so I wasn't probably pitching it in a way that made sense. But I realized my response to all those people was, no, that's not what this story is, you know. To me, that's like the hook. That's the point of writing the whole story. Like, I don't want to write a sci-fi. I like sci-fi, but I feel like there are lots of sci-fis and horrors about actual UFOs already. But this is a story about real people who have really seen UFOs. Like, that's the thing that was exciting for me, is watching YouTube videos of people who had genuinely seen this thing that they could not explain, and then having to deal with their real life after that. So actually having that experience made me realize that I had to make it really clear in the writing that the point of the series is that you're not going to find out what the UFO is. And in fact, are you able to accept that these people saw a thing that you can't explain and they can't explain and still believe them?
And Clea, for you, because I'm sure you see all sorts of different scripts of different stages of development, like kind of what hooked you to say this is the thing we should make?
I was totally on board. I also love sci-fi, but I was totally on board with this vision that Alex had where the the UFO, it means different things to different people. We don't know what it is. It's not resolved. I really love stories with ambiguity. And I think that the sci-fi UFO genre piece of it is a key to unlock this town and these people. And I also really love stories about the richness of people's lives, which includes, secrets and conflicts and difficulties. But the idea that this small town, sort of nowhere town, becomes the epicenter of so much drama and later in the series sort of national focus, and you can just imagine how that would all play out. And then in the end, this is just a story of people trying to make sense of the world.
Alex, you claim to have never seen a UFO. Do you believe that's because they aren't out there? Do you believe they aren't out there? You just haven't been lucky enough, or how do you land on this question?
Well, I have researched a lot of people who have seen a UFO, and whether or not I believe that it was an alien or that there's some other explanation, they believe what they saw, and I know that I've never had an experience like that. I'm actually, the truth is, real life, I'm a pretty logical person. I grew up with my dad's a science teacher, and I grew up going, oh my God, Dad, why is the sky blue? And he'd be like, well, it's the, telling me the scientific explanation for everything. So that logical part of my brain goes, well, there are a lot of other things that it could be before a UFO. But I do believe that people have these experiences that cannot be explained, and I think it's so easy for us to, I think it's fascinating how people jump on someone who says they've seen a UFO and they try and explain it as soon as they can. And sometimes their explanations are much more complicated than a UFO explanation would be.
Claire, how about you on the Mulder to Scully ratio?
Yeah, I guess we're both Scullys in this situation. I mean, I do agree with Alex. Like, I've always believed since I was a little kid that there is probably life out there somewhere. I mean, in this massive universe. There are so many exoplanets. There's just so much possibility. I think if we were to make contact with that life, it would be much weirder than the way people experience UFOs. Like, it would be harder to comprehend what this life form is. I think, as human beings, we try to anthropomorphize everything. And it makes sense because it's, again, that's how we make sense of the world. But I just think probably if you had an encounter with alien life, it would be much stranger, right? And then I also come back to like the Fermi paradox of if there are aliens out there, like why haven't they made such definitive contact that there's no doubt in anyone's mind? So, but I'm torn again because people I believe in the unexplained. Like, I believe that there are things beyond our comprehension. I believe that our brains perceive things. Our brains are ordering information all the time and deciding what to tell us about and how to process it. And maybe when people see UFOs, their brains have perceived something that the rest of us aren't seeing, but that's there. I mean, that part, like, I don't know.
That takes me down a totally different rabbit hole. But you remind me of I met with a folklorist because I am the spooky Maine person, and there's a local legend about a haunted, like a ghost who appears to hitchhikers. And one of the things in his book is that it sort of takes that thing of the unexplained sort of renders itself in the cultural language you're familiar with, because like this particular area where this ghost appears. Historically was also considered sort of cursed and a bad area by the natives, but they didn't sort of see it as a ghost. They saw it as some sort of other sort of demonic thing. And so there's something to be said of, I don't know, is it some sort of phenomena, which is a phenomena, but UFO is what someone clocks because they're whatever is going on in their way of perceiving the universe UFO is the language that they have to. So I don't know. That's perfectly, to me. I'm with you guys in that the mystery is far more interesting than like the big reveal where they pop out with the big little like wavy things out of their faces and speak English weirdly. The mystery is satisfying to me. So we talked about this a little bit, but just in terms of like, and because you were talking about being on location and whatnot, but are there any particular scenes or moments in the show that are just favorites that you'd like to share?
I mean, Clay's already mentioned it, but it's not even any acting, but that moment where Kyle runs down the hallway and knocks on the door and says, "Mom," and picks up the keys. There's something about the sound of those keys being picked up, which is so like recognizable to everybody. And the fact that we recorded that, like we were in Claire's house, we had to figure out where Clay was going to stand to be able to move the microphone as I ran. But in a similar way, like I think it was the same day that we recorded the other scenes between Toby and Hazel. So the little kids spying on Hazel's dad. And finding out that they're having an affair. And those scenes as well, we recorded them with the actors like running around the house and climbing along the wall and ducking under a window. And we got them to move the recording device, the microphone in the window. All that stuff really felt like we were embodying those characters. And when I was a little kid, like I've got a sister a similar age to me, and we used to play those games all the time. And it really felt like that it was that feeling of being a kid running around pretending that you're in a, TV show or something for the first time.
How about you, Clea?
I really love the final. I mean, this feels like a cheat, right? But I really love the final scene of the series. I love that moment between Toriro and Lily, between the character of Toby and the character of Imogen. And because to me it encapsulates, first of all, it's like there's been a lot of drama and tension, and it feels like a real release of tension. And it's also just the two of them grappling with what is the core theme of the series. Like, how do you make sense of the world? And they both make sense of the world differently, but also they're at peace with that, and they can accept. I mean, maybe Toby just would push her more to say it was a UFO, right? But I think that we have a really hard time sitting with differences sometimes in opinion or worldview. And I think for me, it was a really beautiful moment of these two characters who have very firmly held beliefs, just saying, I think it's this and you think it's that, and that's okay. So I just love that.
This has been so much fun. Is there anything new the review are working on that you want to tell us about?
Oh, well, I was just telling you before we got started that I'm making my first game, which I'm writing and producing. It's a 2D game inspired by graphic novels, and it's a genre piece as well. It's got some ghosts in it. And yeah, so that's just like a completely different, I keep trying all these different things like, I'll make an audio drama. Now I'm going to learn how to make a game. But yeah, it's been really fun. It is also quite a journey, learning all the things I didn't know and all the things that would have made it slightly easier if I'd known them at the start, but that's okay.
Well, that's the journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there are a whole bunch of ideas that I've got for audio drama, which hopefully we'll get to explore now that Hovering's become a bit more successful. I mean, hugely more successful. And I've also, so last year I wrote a play, which was a horror kind of folk play about a couple who live on a houseboat and then a rat that turns into a human and wants to eat their baby. And I'm working with that same team on a new animal play, but this one's like a farce about this very lonely woman who wants to she wants to woo this girl in her office, but she works from home. And so she decides the best way to woo her is to buy a pet octopus. And then the octopus is played by a human. And it's a terrible idea. And then chaos ensues. So I don't know. I'm in this weird kind of absurd animal theater space. I'm also deep in the research stage of writing a very audience participatory play about a cult, which is good fun to explore.
But not a cult with an octopus in it.
No animals. This one is very meta and not weird.
Well, it's a whole other one. Oh, that's so much fun. Well, you know where to find us. We know we're big fans of your work. Think you did something really unique and special and fun and mysterious with Hovering, and it's been a real honor to bring it to the Undertow fans. Clea, Alex, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Fred.
And that was Alex Duncan and Clea Frost. Find Clea's website at plottwist.au. And Alex's website is his name, alexander-duncan.com. We'll put both in the show notes as well. Find more of their respective work. In the meantime, keep tuned here on Undertow for stories of the weird, wicked, and uncanny. Catch you next time.
What if we could disagree in a way that encouraged empathy even during an election year? With a new episode of Thread the Needle, a better way to disagree. I'm your host, Donna Schill Dugan. I use my background in journalism and draw from my life experiences to explore topics that matter to fellow feminists like you. In this episode, activist and professor Loretta Ross charges us to try her calling in technique.
I'm always going to hold people accountable for the harm that they do. The question is, am I going to do it with anger or am I going to do it with love and grace? And I choose love and grace because it makes me feel better about myself when I walk through the world that way.
You can listen to Thread the Needle on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Greetings, adventurers. Today we're excited to introduce you to a new story, Dark Dice, a horror podcast that blurs the line between actual play and audio drama, where the story is determined by the roll of the dice. 6 adventurers embark on a journey into the ruinous domain of the Nameless God. They will never be the same again. One of the players is not what they seem after a doppelganger, a creature that can assume the form and voice of whatever it kills, infiltrates the team. As the players are picked off and replaced one at a time, can they figure out who the monster is before it's too late? Can you? Here's a quick example of what our show sounds like.
The shambler with the jar of liquid inside of him.
Soren Arkwright let loose an arrow that cracked the glass, passing through the spine of the creature. The shambler still managed to maintain its forward momentum, but stumbled as it eagerly tried to bite and swipe at Soren, landing near his feet.
As Jeff Goldblum has now joined our cast, Dark Dice is available however you listen to podcasts.